So I put all this together, believing that God is coming like a mighty roaring lion to enter the scene. He's already been here, but to enter through voices. Gotta remember your voice, whether figuratively or literally, to tell you that God has turned the tide. Might be in a relationship, might be in a difficulty. His love never quits. God has turned the tide. He said, listen, this is what the Lord said. That sometimes we get in situations of life, I'm talking to you now, that you feel you got swat around and you're the mouse and there's a tomcat after you. And what does God say? He says, come on in here. Hide yourself in me. In me is the refuge. In me is the place where you can't hide no matter what's going on around. And God says, I have turned the tide. The neat thing about this, that's just an interesting word I use. The cool thing about this is we can still declare that God has turned the tide even before we have a physical manifestation of it. Are you following me? Because I really believe there's a word going on. I'm not the only one saying it, and I didn't get it from anyone. I got it from Psalm 118. That God's like, hey, you've got people on your right and your left. You're facing the battle. The tomcat is swiping you out. But as you take refuge in the Lord, you can trust in him. You may be hemmed in. Psalm 118 in the message says, hemmed in by barbarians, but in God's name I'll take my place in refuge. And it even says, in God's name I rub their faces in the dirt. Nothing like the message. The tide has turned. God has turned the tide. You may be in a situation where like swarming bees. That's all they are, little bees. They're not going to bite you. It's like any distraction. Because, see, the enemy knows the tide has turned, so he's going to give you a little resistance. I don't put too much emphasis on the enemy, but just, you can, where is this coming from? Is it coming from my emotions? Am I reacting and not responding? Put that aside and make declarations that God is your song. He is your strength. He's your salvation. You can hear the shouts like the tide has turned. You know there are shouts if you listen. There's shouts in the heavenlies. I think the angels are doing high fives with each other. They're rejoicing. The tide has turned. Come on, guys. The tide has turned. And then as we make that declaration, God, over my finances, over my relationships, over that situation, I am going to declare the tide has turned. In your word, it says the tide has turned. And you know what the angels who are doing high fives do? They're like, oh, they said it. Let's make it happen. Let's be ministering spirits. Let's go forward. But believe that. So basically, I want you to read Psalm 118 in the message if you can. And I want you to see this battle going on and then the thank you in the midst of the battle. Like verse 21, thank you for responding to me. You've truly become my salvation. The stones the masons discarded as flaw is now the capstone. The cornerstone, Jesus is in your corner, so you know the tide is turned. This is the very day, it says later on, that God acted. Let's celebrate and be festive. Blessed are those who enter in God's name. From God's house we bless you. God is God. God has turned the tide. So they are like, hey, they maybe not seen a physical manifestation of this, right? The tide has turned. Wherever you jump in on this video, over your situation, over your circumstances, the tide has turned. Let me be the one to shout it. There's other people shouting it. But I just felt so passionate about this. I've even spoken about it already. But I just think we need to hear that again. I think we need to make those declarations. We can get swatted around by the enemy, but ultimately, as we know Jesus is our cornerstone and we're on the rock and the rock doesn't shake, ultimately, I really see it. This is the way I saw it. Just flicking those things away like they're flat. This is it with the enemy. You're not subject to him. He is subject to you. So, God has turned the tide. Do I have to say that one more time? It's exciting when you can say something like that, and in your heart and in your spirit, you see God turning the tide for people. And God's like, whoa, you may be hemmed in, ready to fall, but I'm going to grab you and hold you. God's going to grab you and hold you, whoever that is. You're not going to fall. You're going to give God your praise and your song, and God has turned the the tide.